Video game movies were supposed to be better by now. Video games are a great and proud part of nerd culture, and in culture in general. They are a beautiful, fully artistic, interactive medium that has so much more potential than most people give them credit for. They can be educational while still fully entertaining. They can provide very important social commentary. They can make you contemplate complex ideals that you might not have considered contemplating before. They are especially very good at helping you out with eye-hand coordination. And most important of all, they are absolutely capable of enriching your life. So why hasn't anybody made a good movie out of them yet? Seriously, for as long as there have been video games, there have been attempts to adapt said video games into movies, and none of them have been any good. With the one exception, of course, being this movie. And I'm not even a big fan of the game series it's based upon. I mean, I like it, but it's not the first thing I think of when I think of video games. But even so, this movie is still very good. If you have not seen it yet, I highly recommend it. But despite that, almost every other attempt at adapting video games to a movie has just been utterly, unforgivingly horrible. They either miss the point of the game entirely, or they're presented in such a way that they don't even look like the game anymore. The biggest problem seems to be that the people who are adapting these games into movies are missing the point of what made the game so fascinating in the first place. And a lot of things that make these games fascinating just simply don't translate very well into film. And Assassin's Creed is sadly another example of that very phenomenon. Now, because I'm aware that some of my audience are not big-time gamers, please allow me a moment to explain to you what Assassin's Creed is. Assassin's Creed is a video game series that revolves around a very interesting science fiction story. In the world of this game, memories can be stored in one person's DNA. And in this world where memories are stored in your DNA, it can be read and recorded in a machine called the Animus. A shady company has a guy named Desmond who is apparently the living descendant of a certain important figure in history, and they plug him into the Animus to examine his ancestors' memories. The main hook of the game, however, is the incredible amount of freedom you have to go about the environment. You can pull off incredible parkour, all kinds of fascinating jumps, improvise your plan of attack and plan of escape, and just spend hours climbing and jumping and running off of everything in the environment. It really is a lot of fun to play. Plus, the general story as presented within the Ancestors' memories is pretty fascinating. The story within the Ancestors' memories revolve around two factions, the Templars and the Assassins. And they have both been in a constant feud over something called the Apple of Eden. Long story short, it's related to the idea of the ancient astronauts. Anyway, the Templars want to use the Apple of Eden to control humanity in order to achieve full peace, but the Assassins don't want that to happen, believing more in free will and accepting and believing in flawed humanity. It's a classic moral dilemma of controlled peace versus flawed free will, and it really tackles it pretty well for the most part. And it is absolutely a story that could translate very well into a movie. Sadly, it seems to have gone right over these filmmakers' heads. I mean, yeah, the basic gist of the plot is there, and they at least sort of mimic the things that would happen in the game, but that's not enough to make it a good movie. Not only are the creative choices they made in terms of changing things from game to the movie kind of stupid, the movie itself just doesn't work at all. The biggest change from the game to the movie is the Animus. In the game, the Animus was just sort of a highly technological lounge chair that someone would sit in there and it would read their ancestors' memories, and that's what you would play in the game. The movie turns it into this gigantic mechanical computerized arm that holds him up in different positions and helps him sort of recreate the actions of his ancestors. Which in theory is kind of a neat idea, but in practice, it's outdone by its own cleverness. It's just another case of highly exaggerating something that didn't really need to be exaggerated in the first place. Now, accuracies in the game aside, everything else in this movie is just stupid, wrong-headed, ridiculous, annoying, and downright insulting. For starters, the action scenes, which should be the main set pieces of this movie, are boring as hell. Every action scene in this movie is cut in that annoying rapid-fire editing practice that has just been plaguing a lot of Hollywood action movies as of late. You can't comprehend what's going on in the action because the editing is moving way too fast for you to even register what's going on. It's implying the action instead of actually showing the action. The cinematography is just downright ugly. The entire film has this ugly haze over it that makes everything look murky and grimy and gritty and just downright, well, repugnant. And you thought the orange and teal color palette was overused in other action films? You haven't seen nothing yet. Also, this is yet another annoying case where the people making the movie assumed that they had to make everything dark and gritty and grim and sad and depressing and dour because they think that's the only way they can be taken seriously. When really, all you need is so simple that I don't understand why it's so hard for so many filmmakers to comprehend. That is, of course, having a character who is likable and sympathetic, of which there are none in this movie. You don't care about anyone, you don't like anyone, and you certainly don't want to root for anyone because no one in this movie is worth your time or effort. Not even the main character, who's played by Michael frickin' Fassbender, a fantastic actor who is normally able to do something awesome in his sleep. Here, it feels like he's just half asleep the entire time. The film was directed by Justin Kurzel, whose previous big film was an adaptation of the Scottish play. I was trained in theater, I can't say the actual name aloud. And I've tried watching that movie twice, and both times I fell asleep halfway through. Not because it was Shakespeare, but because it was just so dull. It is especially worth noting that I ended up seeing this movie in 3D, and that made it even worse. The rapid-fire editing, the close-up shots, the occasional shaky cam, and the massive amounts of parkour, which, by the way, did actually translate pretty well in the film when you could see it, made the movie painful to watch. I literally got sick to my stomach at certain points. And when it's not assaulting your eyes with the obnoxious visuals and the unnecessary rapid-fire editing, it is giving you a massive headache with its sound design. Mostly during the action scenes, the sound design for some reason decides to crank it up to 11 and downright blare your ears off. You can actually feel the sound hitting you in the chest and assaulting your ears, and it just gets so discombobulating, you can't take it. I mean, I think I understand why they did it, maybe to showcase how being in this machine, reliving your ancestors' memories can be so intense, but there had to have been a better way to do it than what they did for this movie. However, despite all that, I can say at least one semi-positive thing about this movie. The costume designs were very good. They actually looked straight out of the game. Guys, I'm very sorry to say that this is yet another disappointing video game movie, which is really upsetting because, as I already said, video game movies are supposed to be better by now. We're nearly 17 years into the 21st century, and you would think someone in Hollywood would have said, you know, maybe we're looking at video games the wrong way. I cannot, in good conscience, recommend this movie to anyone for any reason, not even out of curiosity. So do not waste your time and money in this movie. But you know what's actually out in theaters right now that's pretty good? Passengers. So go see that instead. Ladies and gentlemen, I am TheNorm telling you what Hollywood does not want you to hear. Thank you for watching, and have a happy holidays.